hit record on this camera. Yeah, hit record on that one.
Yep.
Good. Okay.
Are the mics?
Sound test.
Okay.
Can you hear him?
I can.
All right. Let me have you count to 10, Mr. Ellison.
Starting.
Yeah.
1, 2,
2.
3.
All right, I'm getting
4.
That's good. All
Okay.
right. Now you can, we're good. I'm going to just clap 3 times right in front of your face to sync our audio on both cameras. So, wow, thank
Did you do
you.
white balance or card?
I didn't white balance, but we did white balance originally, and they should have saved it. So I think we're set. So thank you for making the huge effort to come over and slip this in with us. I'm really very, very grateful. I know that I think you were the first person to get the phone call from Kenny Peters that there was possibly a missing person story.
Mm-hmm.
Would you be willing to recount that for me? And also, please introduce yourself for the camera and what your role was in 1975 in Snowflake, what your position was with the police office.
Okay. I was employed by the Navajo County Sheriff's Office to be the Sheriff's Office representative in a district out in the Heber area, which included about a 60-mile square area and several little towns. My house and my private phone was the phone that the Sheriff's Office gave to the public to call in case there was anything they needed law enforcement for. And so I was there doing that duty and had been for several years when this incident occurred. And it was evening time. My family was home and we had just sat down to eat supper, which was not unusual to get a call about that time. And the phone rang. And continuing from there, if you want me to.
Yeah, you know what I'm going to do?
Okay.
I'm just going to take this off and give this to your wife for a moment. You look a little better without a name tag sitting right on you. Okay, keep going.
Continuing from that point, a young man on the phone told me that he needed help and that Travis had been taken, or they took Travis, I think is the term he used. Well, that didn't mean anything to me. I mean, I need more information to base some kind of factual understanding on. So, well, where are you? Well, I'm at the post office telephone booth in Heber. So, okay, you stay there and I'll be there shortly. So I went there, and when I arrived there, there were 6 young men there. I'm estimating it was dark, and there was a little light, but not an awful lot. Plus, I had the headlights from my patrol unit on them, and but they were obviously very upset about something. Being a police officer and having that police officer nature, I didn't start putting together any thoughts into mine about what it might be, because basically you have to get out and find out what's going on before you start making any decisions about what to do or what it is or anything else. So I got out, and they were just stomping around, and a couple of them were crying. Excuse me, I have a frog. And it won't go down. And so I finally got enough coherency out of a couple of them to find a few things out. They were timber thinners on a contract with the U.S. Forest Service, and they were working in the Turkey Springs area. And they were out there working, and it had got dark, and they were preparing to go home. And I was getting this story bits and pieces. It wasn't something I was having to kind of just fish for it. And so between the anguish and I tried to get just as close to each one of them as I could to see if I could detect odors of marijuana or alcohol or anything like that, because that's what I'm there for, is to see what's going on. And I'd been in this profession for quite some number of years, and I was pretty good at it. So I didn't detect any. And So then then I thought, if it's any kind of substance abuse going on here, it's not odorous, and I don't know what it is. So I continued talking to them, and they kept relating the story. And I said, you know, what do you mean they got Travis? Tell me what you mean they got Travis. Start at the beginning and tell me this story. I said, what were you doing? Were you coming home? Yes, we had just gotten a pickup, and we had started to leave the work area, and we came by a little clearing. There was some of us in the back of the truck, and some of us were in the front of the truck, in the seat. Travis was on the passenger side near the door. And when we came to this clearing, a very brilliant object appeared, and it looked like a UFO, and it was there, and Travis became excited. He had thought that he had seen some before, and so he bailed out of the truck to run over there to it. So I'm getting this story bit by bit. And when I had taken the two out there that I had taken, they did not want to go back. They were frightened and afraid. They did not want to go back. I had to threaten them to get them to go. But when we got there, they showed me exactly where the place was. And I got out and examined the area, but to continue on with what they were telling me. Travis ran up under this thing, and they said when he did, it zapped him. That's what they said. I said, what do you mean it zapped him? Well, it just knocked him down. Well, how bad did it knock him down? Did it knock him down just down, or no, it knocked him 10 feet or so. Okay, so then what did you do? Well, to put it in the phrase that I was given, we hauled ass. I said, well, yeah, that makes sense to me. You run off and left Travis is what you did. Yeah, we did. And I said, well, how far did you go? Well, we went out and up the hill and turned onto another little road. And by the time we got up there, we saw the thing come up out of the trees and take off real fast. So then we stopped, and everybody was really frightened, and we said, well, we got to go back and get Travis. So according to their story, they turned around and went back. Travis was not there, and the thing was gone. So at that point, I guess, was when they decided to come into town and call the enforcement authorities to check into this. And so I searched the area in the spot that they showed me in the dark. It was a kind of a wood area. There was trees around it, and there was leaves and stuff and vegetation on the ground, and I could not see a skid mark of any kind, like as if some kind of aircraft had touched on the ground. I could not see a footprint of any kind. I couldn't detect any odors. I didn't see any burns or any vegetation scorched or anything like that. So I went back to the car, and I said, well, we may as well leave because he's not here. And I kind of run my spotlight around the area, and I couldn't see anything that was disturbed, like bushes being torn down or anything like that. So I decided it was really no real sense to widening out my area of search at that moment, because I had a lot of people I could get there real soon to do that. So we went back to town. And in the meantime, the sheriff, Marylin Ellison, I had called him, and Ken Copeland, who was the undersheriff, he was a one-eyed fella, big tall boy, and they were in Lakeside somewhere, and they were coming over. And they did. And when they came, some of the other guys from the department came, and we all went to the scene again. I see, I was understood somebody to say that the sheriff's office didn't even go out there till the next morning. And that's not so. Because Ken Copeland and I stayed out there that night in the back of a pickup truck.
All night?
All night.
Waiting for the craft to come back?
We were just waiting to see what happened. I'm not at the spot. We moved away a little ways. But we were in the back of the pickup truck waiting all night. Okay. The next morning, the sheriff and some of the other guys and all of the people that we had called started to arrive, and I guess perhaps there might have been, she came, she worked for the Forest Service at that time, and the Forest Service brought a helicopter out there, and we had people with dogs, we had people on horses, and I think there was some people on three-wheelers or whatever to do some searching. I got up in the back of a pickup truck and yelled, and everybody came over, and I said, this is what I want. I want everyone who is in the dog business here to see if you can get a scent somewhere of something that Travis had, or maybe out of the pickup or something. I want you to go to the scene and see if any of those dogs can pick up a scent and trail. The rest of you, I want to start in this area, and I want you to start making a circular search for any footprints or any sign of anyone walking on this ground or anyone leaving on any kind of a vehicle or anything like that. I want that. If you find that, I want to know. I said, one of us will come and examine it, and because there was a bunch of us there. I said, the rest of you, you start going through these brush piles, because I want to know if there's anything in those brush piles that might resemble a body. And so the search started. And before long, other people arrived. I believe sometime during the time we were out there searching, we was out there, 3 days, I believe, or I believe we was there 3 days, maybe 4. And at one time, Travis's mother and another brother came out there, and his mother was a very nice lady. I talked to her a lot. She wasn't afraid at all. She said, they'll bring Travis back. She said, he's seen them before. Well, I found out from talking to her that they had lived in a very remote area, not too awful far from where we were, called Bear Springs. There was an old cattle ranch bunkhouse building there, and they had stayed there for, I don't know how, maybe quite some time they'd lived there. And during that time they'd lived there, apparently Travis had seen something before. I didn't ever get the story. She told me a lot about it, but she said he's not afraid of them, and he wants to see them. He's eager to see them. And I said, well, that's strange, but but anyway, we talked, and I enjoyed her. I liked her a lot. There was others there who was asking me questions all the time. Is this a hoax? And I said, sir, I'm not here to determine if this is a hoax. I'm here to determine if a law has been broken. If somebody is out here that's reportedly missing, I need to find that person. I ain't going into whether this is a hoax or not, so let's just don't even discuss it. Well, a lot of people had a lot to say to the brothers and the other boys that was there, because they were known to be rowdies and stuff, but all men are, all young men are. I know, I understand that, see, so I didn't get on them because I grew up pretty much the way they did, and I just didn't want to do that. So anyway, the days proceeded on, and the helicopter went around, and people expanded, and we never found a footprint or a sign anywhere of Travis Walton.
Did you have dogs that were also sniffing with some of his clothes?
Well, yes, we had dogs on the scene. I never did. I don't remember ever hearing from my dog people, but they didn't come back and tell me they'd found any scent. So, and I was there the whole time. So we called the search off and started to spread out to other areas and seek information from other sources. And there was people that even told us that they had seen Travis hitchhiking on the road somewhere between Payson and Heber, and that was never confirmed. It was never, I talked to one old gentleman, and he said, I've known Travis ever since he's a baby. He said, he walked beside my pickup and asked for a ride. And I said, well, the guy he had one of those surgeries where they removed his voice, and he talked, like that, to a phone. But he told me that, and I didn't believe it or disbelieve it. I mean, he thought he saw him, and then if he did, that's fine. I don't know, but he couldn't pinpoint where it was, and nobody ever did. I sent people to look, and we didn't find him. So,
do I understand it correctly? And maybe I've gotten the story wrong, but I understood that you almost deliberately tried to take a man from. There were different search parties looking, and you put one of the members of the crew in various search parties with a deputy officer of some sort. And that deputy officer tried to get more information about the whole picture, and maybe even incriminated the boys that maybe something.
Yes, we had done all of the things that we were usually do at searches like that. I mean, when you go, you don't just say, y'all do this, this, and this, and send them out. You have to send, if you will, a supervisor from the department to keep them on track of what they're doing and why and what they're seeing if they find something. And see, I've been on those things where we had a young lady that had run away from a camp up on the rim country and or been abducted or something. So anyway, we went up there and there was people searching all over, and somebody found her footprints where she had crossed the road barefooted. Well, I went down there and looked at those footprints, and I said, "Men, I want to tell you something. A young bear made those footprints right there. That is not a girl's footprints. You need to get yourself out of that mess. She ain't going to be running barefooted in this forest anyway. She's a city girl. She won't be running barefooted in this forest. This forest just won't let her do it." So anyway, we found out that she had met her boyfriend there, and they went back to Phoenix for a little meeting together, and you know. But I found out, and actually, that search lasted 2 or 3 days, and I got a hold of a Phoenix police officer, and I said, "Go to that home address and check on it and see if there's someone there." Well, they found a lady there, the girl. She was there. So they didn't call this search off right now.
So when you were searching for Travis, were the other officers directed by you or by Sheriff Gillespie to try to get more information and find out if there was an accidental accident with a chainsaw? Or if actually
Well, yes, we discussed that.
Could you recount that for the camera?
Okay, well, see, whenever we were deciding what to do and what we might find out, this is all if. You can't put a statement like that into effect and say, this is what we will find. You can't do that. But we were saying, if they had got into a fight and were goofing around and one of them killed one of them accidentally or maybe, and they got afraid and hid him in one of these brush piles and then concocted this story to fix it. We need to examine every brush pile to see if there really is somebody here and if that was what happened. And yeah, we were there. I told them all to do that. I said, you know, we don't know what we're looking for. All we're looking for is Travis, and we don't know where we're going to find him or what condition he's going to be in or nothing else, but we got to expect whatever we see. And I always did that. I mean, it was a matter of routine with me, and Marylin trusted me. He trusted me to do the job, and I mean, after all, they hired me and put me out there by myself, and they just left me alone. And so if anybody wanted to talk to a sheriff, they talked to Sheriff Chuck Ellison because Marylin was not there. I mean, I'm not demoting Marylin. He's a good sheriff and a good friend of mine. I saw a lot of him and still do. But the thing is he just gave it to me and said, you know, get on the truck and tell people what you want. And it's not that I tried to take anything away from him, and wouldn't have. I just do what I was told, and that's what he told me to do. And
how did you find out that Travis was returned, and did you go by any of the houses? And before that question, one other question: was it you who went to Travis's mother's house with Mike Rogers?
No, I sent another deputy there.
Okay, very good. So, what happened when Travis was returned? Even before that, the boys were all suspected of murder. Even though you couldn't find a body, there was a lot of suspicion. Do you want to talk anything about that, about why Cy Gilson came in, and or was that totally Marlin's doing? Did you have any discussions with Marlin back and forth about?
Oh yeah, we discussed it a lot.
Okay, so explain for me,
But
like,
but the thing is you got to understand the police motives and attitudes when they're working. It's not to be suspicious minded. It's not to make wild guesses. What it is to pinpoint what we're going to do and what we're looking for, and stay away from all of this other stuff because it's distracting. So if you're going to go around and listen to, oh, I'll tell you what, I know one of them boys and he did this and he did that and I'll bet you they killed him. And you don't want to get into that because that's going to cause, and I don't want people saying it around where I'm searching because it messes up things for us. And it was going on there. And I tried to stop it as much as I could, but I couldn't stop all of it because they're going to talk when I ain't around there, anyway. But yeah, we discussed that. It was discussed that they could have got into a fight and maybe one of them, maybe they're goofing off with a chainsaw or something and killed each other, or one of them killed the other. Or maybe they were, it was reported that 2 or 3 of them had been into a little bit of marijuana smoking, which it may or may not have been. I mean, I don't have no proof whether it was or not, but you got to look at what you have been told. And I looked at that and I said, if they were into that and they got high on marijuana and got into a big argument, they could have had a fight and this could have ended up in a disaster. So we need to look for any possibility of any of those things happening. But I didn't tell that to everybody because, you can't do that. If I just get up on the back of a truck and say, we're going to look for a bloody mess here somewhere, then that gets in people's minds and it distracts from what we're really trying to do. As a police officer, if you don't have enough sense to realize what people are going to do because you don't know nothing about human nature then, and you're going to let human nature get involved into the thing, and human nature is not what you need in an investigation.
so whose idea was it to have the lie detection? Do you know? Who
That was after it was over and I had nothing to do with it whatsoever.
Okay.
I know what I was told and that's all. And that's not for my part of that's not per fact and written on lead. It's just what I was told.
What effect did this have on the community? Because it was a homicide story and a UFO story and a missing person story. From what I understand, it became a bit of a zoo with people coming in and the news calling you. I want you to comment a little bit about what happened in Snowflake and Heber.
Well, when I got back to my home, the first night, I lay down in bed and the phone rang. It did not stop till daylight or after. I was called by Canada, I was called by England, I was called by Japan, I was called by Russia, I was called by several Asian countries, I was called by Caribbean countries, I was called call all night long. News agencies. And the second night of that, I was just about give out because I'd been out there several days. And whenever you're trying to rest up and you go to bed and the phone rings every 3 minutes all night, you ain't going to get no rest. So I called the sheriff's office in Holbrook and I said, can you get the telephone company to redirect these phones here over to your office so that I can get some rest? And they did. And then she was working over at the Forest Service, and when she went to work, it was the same thing there. She was the business management person there, and of course, a lot of the calls were directed right into her office, and she said it just rang all day long. So we had heard an awful lot of this and had it in our heads constantly till it was just plumb over.
What about Philip Class? Did Philip Class try to contact you? Philip Class,
Philip Class did contact me, and I took him out to the scene. We spent a day out there. Very nice gentleman, very intelligent. He brought a Geiger counter out with him, and we went to the scene, and he checked it out. He said, well, there's no radiation activity here any more than is normal for this part of the world. So he said, I can't determine anything from that. He identified himself to me as a federal U.S. government UFO investigator, Philip Class. And I think he was, you know. And he was the only U.S. government man that appeared on the scene. The movie was a big farce. I mean, I don't want to cut nobody on the movie in particular, but that movie just really was not reality.
Do you remember the name of the movie you're talking about?
Fire in the Sky. I went and seen it. And because I was there and I knew what was going on and all that, it was just nothing like what happened. It wasn't in the same state. And of course, Garner was an actor who didn't have nothing to do with any of us. And the sheriff that they were supposed to have was him, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I can't remember, but anyway, it was. We sat there and watched the movie, and I said, Marylin, this ain't right. But if it helped Travis and the boys, good. I'm glad they got it.
There was a federal investigation that Philip Class was responsible for. He actually hired a federal investigator and came up with 9 counts of indictment against Mike Rogers for fabricating this event to get out of a logging crew contract, which was all made up, that wasn't true, but Phil Class was responsible for this, and he sent a federal investigator out on the site. Were you contacted for any of that, or did you?
No, we thought about that, and it was available to us as investigators for the sheriff's office. She worked for the Forest Service right there where I could have got any documents at all about it. I knew quite a little bit about that sort of thing because I knew several people were involved. A friend of mine was involved, and I helped him with it at times. And I knew that they were having trouble with the contract. I knew that. But you see, I also know that doing some stunt like that is not going to get you out of the contract. It just ain't. So I didn't go into depths to investigate it because I mean, I could have had my department to go over to her department and we could have got any document they had about it at all. I didn't have to go through the federal government to do that. But I didn't see no reason to do that. Because there was, you know, from what I know about the contracts, there was no way, is there, that they could have, you couldn't have got out of it by doing something like that.
Is there anything else you particularly really want to share that's important, that you think is important, like about the UFO phenomenon or number of sightings? Have you ever had a sighting?
I have. Let me get another detail about this. Now, several nights after the thing, and what was the 5th night, wasn't it? Marlon Gillespie's wife was a supervisor in the phone company at Holbrook. And so they were monitoring phone calls from Heber. And so way late in the evening, I guess sometime near midnight, I got a call. And the phone company said, we need you to go to, well, the sheriff's office was sending me, but they had got a hold of the phone company. We need you to go down to the phone booth in Heber because Travis was just there not long ago and made a phone call. And we have the conversations and all that. And we need to get a fingerprint to confirm that he really was there. And I said, well, if you've got it, he was there. Well, no, go down there and see if you can get a fingerprint. And I said, okay. So I went down there, and it had been snowing, and it was wet, and the moisture and fingerprints won't work. And I couldn't lift prints. So we just quit. And
did you go over to Travis's house then? And someone stopped at Travis's house and saw Dwayne filling his car with siphoning gas from one truck to another.
No, I did not. His house was 33 miles from where I lived, and I didn't go there. And the reason why I didn't is because I was told a little later, maybe even later that night, that in fact, I was told right then, wasn't I, that he had called his brother in Snowflake and asked his brother to come and get him. and that they had discussed this. His brother's going to come and get him, and they were going to go to Tucson. Was what I was to understand. And in fact, I guess they did do that. And when they got to Tucson, they hired their own attorneys to represent them in this thing, and their own lie detectors to represent them in this thing. And of course, human nature makes me know why they did that, because they knew they were going to get under a bunch of stressful questions and things like that, and accusations that had already been, you know. So half the people in the country thought they'd murdered Travis. The other half thought that it was a hoax, and then 2 or 3 of us knew better, and you know, I mean, it just, well, you know, a police investigation's got to be that. It just can't be speculation. So when Travis come back, that ended my case as far as my part of it was concerned, because I was a field officer, so the sheriff's office at Holbrook, I guess they went to Tucson, they brought him back, I don't know, but they also did their own lie detector test, and out of the 7 boys, 1 of them did not pass the lie detector test. He was not Travis.
That's wonderful what you've shared with me, Mr. Ellison. I'm so very grateful, and I had no idea that your wife Marylin was working for the Forest Service at the time. What I'm going to ask is if you're comfortable going on camera talking about the Forest Service's reaction to this. Just a couple statements. Would you be comfortable? Mm-hmm. All right, what I'm going to suggest is that we move your husband to this chair, but don't get up yet. And I'm going to get out the same release and just have you write your name on it, because you're going to go on at 4, and the gal coordinating the conference just is under pressure to make sure everything is right. So we don't have a lot of time. I want to make sure I have you back there between 3:15, because she's going to be having a bird. If she
Well, ma'am, I just want to make one statement.
Yes,
I am a professional, and I started this in 1960 under Cal Boyce in Phoenix as a deputy. And I've worked several years for Cal Boyce. I worked several years for Navajo County. I worked, well, altogether 32 years complete. And with Gila County is where I finally left the state and went back to Arkansas. I was born and raised in Arkansas, but I stayed out here 40 years. And most of all my law enforcement was here.
And you've been a career.
Yes, and I went to Tennessee and Kentucky and worked for the United States government as an investigator for a while. And then I became a chief of police in a little town in Arkansas, and that was the biggest flop I ever saw in my life. I never want to get involved in nothing like that again.
What, you're referring to this UFO thing that happened? It was the biggest flop, or something that happened in...
No, in the city of I worked for as a chief of police in Arkansas. I never run into such a mess in my life.
That's interesting. I won't go there, because that's all.
Yeah, that ain't got nothing to do with us.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to grab the release. I'm not even going to turn the cameras off, but I am going to move this light so that you can find your way to this comfortable chair, because I'm afraid if you try to sit on the sofa, you won't be able to get up and down comfortably.
Shall
I move the
you're
chair
mic'd
to
up.
him? No, no, I need him out of the seat. I want him to be comfortable. So if you come right over
He's
here.
mic'd up and.
Oh, I'm gonna unhook
Yeah,
him. Don't
okay.
worry.
Okay.
Don't worry. That's my next plan. I'm gonna give this to you, and if you can, is that right? Yeah. You can just write your name on there also. Then we're all set. We're not filling out a separate release. It's nice and easy. And you'll take your water with you.
Well,
Oh, now you know what? Here
I don't drink much water because
You don't drink much water?
It's hard to make potty stops.
Well, I have a bathroom right here, by the way, if you want. A nice private bathroom.
Now,
Yes,
the thing
please,
is
did you
about
wanna use
getting
it
out of
before you-
chairs with these ribs is you
Yes,
gotta.
I understand.
I
Can
don't
you-
need help. I don't
can you
need-
lean on me?
No, ma'am, it's
All
not
right.
necessary. Here's what I gotta do.
Yeah, you just have to get to the end.
I gotta get out here like this
Yes.
and make my legs make me go straight up.
I know, I've had back spasms, and I have had, I've had a fracture, and I know getting in and out of something like that, you can't do. So we're gonna head right to that chair, unless you'd like to use our bathroom, which is right back there.
Well, I don't need to now.
Okay.
Sure.
Thank you,
You want me
Marilyn.
to sign it above his
Oh,
name?
sure, or below it, you can just sign it. Actually, you can sign it right down here.
It's
fine.
painful. It don't matter what you do, it's gonna
Oh,
hurt.
I didn't.
Whatever you do, don't laugh.
Don't laugh.
Oh, no, sneeze.
Oh,
Oh, man.
Well, that's
If I
got the
sneeze, I'm
rate,
nearly
so I'm
going over.
thrilled.
I've had broken
Because I know
ribs.
you
Yeah.
can
You
do
can't
this,
laugh.
you have to hold yourself. Nobody ever
And people
told
try
me,
and get me
nobody
laugh
ever
all the time.
introduced me, and I
I got
didn't
to
get
where I gotta be
that
stone
part.
faced and say, look
Okay,
funny.
it goes into my backpack in
You're
the
good?
bedroom on the floor. So let me move you right over here. There's a slippy plastic folder like I travel with all the other releases in there. I'm gonna put you in this chair. And this is, I don't think your husband had a sip of water, so you can have either one of these if you want. And I'm gonna try to find a nice way to mic you up. Thank you, Marilyn, for trusting us. You're fine just like that. Yeah, in fact, I'll take this off and I'll put it right on top with your husband's, right here, clip to that piece. And then I'm gonna take this and just stick it under here a little bit like that. And then get this one and just tuck it under here a little bit like that. And then hide these wires. And then I'm also just going to give this a little tug so that we are straight and we are lined up. Beautiful. Okay.
Here's
Do
your pen.
Oh, thank you so much. Do you have sound? We should be all set because we didn't switch anything, right? We should be
Good.
fine.
Can you count to 10? Can you
Just count to 10?
Just count to 10, please.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Thank you.
Good, I think we're okay with sound. So identify for us, your name and what your role was at the time in 1975, and even your relationship with your husband.
My name is Marylin Ellison. I worked for the U.S. Forest Service for 30 years. At that time, I was stationed at Heber Ranger Station. And, of course, my husband's Lonnie Ellison, or Chuck Ellison. And so anything that happened in our house, law enforcement-wise, it affected the whole family. We have a girl and a boy. And we couldn't do anything or go anywhere at this time because we were questioned about thinking if Travis was gone or it was a hoax or it was a big lie, and when is he coming back from being hidden. And so after we lived this at home, I also went to work and I answered the telephones, and there would be people calling. And they'd want to know what Mike Rogers did for the Forest Service. And of course, he worked for what we used to call Timber Beast, but his name was Tom Hintz. And he felt like that Mike did this because he was going to renege on another contract. Mike, I think, did it once before, and he was running out of time to do the contract before he was going to be penalized. And of course, nobody wants to be penalized. But the Forest Service sent the hotshot crew, their helicopter. They were involved in this search under him. So basically, that's, I saw Mike several times in the office.
Now, from what I understand, if you don't finish a contract, you just don't get paid.
No, you don't get paid, but you also get penalized, and you may never get another contract.
But there was nothing really for Michael to gain, as I understand it. Would you be willing to clarify that for people who don't understand how forestry contracts work? I mean, if he would only be hurting himself, correct?
That's right.
Can you make that in a statement?
Well, when Mike gets a contract, a thinning contract, he goes out and he does it, and he has so many days to do that contract. And if he doesn't show up for 2 or 3 days, that's the days that goes off the contract, no work is done. And so it's not good to have that kind of a reputation, much less be penalized. And that's true with any Forest Service all over this United States.
Was there anything to gain by him not finishing the contract? And would you be able to make that in a statement, yay or nay? Or?
That I was familiar with it?
Yeah, I mean, if Mike didn't finish the contract, he wouldn't get paid. But he was accused of coming up with this false story so that he could get out of a contract. Well, you know, as if there was something for him to gain from getting out of the contract. I'm trying to clarify if Mike had anything to gain by not finishing that contract.
No, he wouldn't. He'd just be out of the contract, but that would hurt his reputation. But Tom Hentz worked with Mike, and they worked together. And if Mike needed more time, and I don't know whether Tom expanded the date already or not, because when you're working in a Forest Service office, you handle a little bit of everything. Fire assignments, work in the timber. So,
What would have happened if Mike didn't finish the contract?
well, they wouldn't hire him anymore, and he would be penalized and would be owing the government money.
And wouldn't somebody else just come along and make a bid for a new bid, and then you'd pass that bid off to somebody else?
I don't know what they would have to make a new bid, but I don't quite remember what they did with that one. But they set up a section, and they set up different areas for thinning contracts, and then people put in their bids, and they have so many days to do it, or maybe months even to do it. And if it's not done, I doubt you'll get another contract.
What was the phones like? What happened at the Forestry Service was it Heber? Describe to me a little bit about how this made national media and how your office was disrupted.
Well, they would call on the phone, and they'd want to know what Mike Rogers' role was with the Forest Service. And they had it wrong, thinking that he worked for the Forest Service. I said, Mike Rogers does not work for the Forest Service. He had a contract with the Forest Service. And so therefore, he is not a government employee. That's where most of them had it all messed up, as they thought he was a government employee.
What happened in the town? I mean, did it become like a media?
The town just went bonkers, you know, UFO City, that's what it was. I think they even had a parade with UFO, and they put up UFO signs, and people start selling things about UFO. And I understand there's a local man now that does wood carving, and he's made a little UFO image, however big you want it, and some of the people take those and put it over where the phone was. So they haven't forgot it. Some people didn't like it because it turned that way at the town. Or
Now, were you and your family attacked with ridicule yourselves around being involved in this story?
well, when your husband's a residential deputy, 24 hours a day, your kids go to school there, I work there, you can't help but be involved some way or being asked some things. And we just never, if our daughter answered the telephone, she'd never answer. She'd say, well, the person you need to talk to is not here. And it just makes your house like a sheriff's office. And Chuck was right in the fact that phone rang constantly, every night. And it was, you just get back to sleep and the phone would ring again.
Is there anything you'd like to share in some way to vindicate the people in this town or the work crew in any way that these things happen and we just have to learn how to deal with them and be respectful? Or is there anything you'd like to share, even if it's on the UFO topic, or what you think about our shift in consciousness as we begin to accept the fact that these things happen? Whatever you want to share, the floor is yours.
Heber was a smaller community. It is now. We used to joke that on the weekends, the population would triple because of people coming up from the valley to stay. And what I mean from the valley is Phoenix. But most of the people earned their living in some way off of the Forest Service. You either hauled logs, had a logging contract, or you had a thinning contract, or there was fires that were, set that would be on the district. But it was pretty much centered around the Forest Service. And it was a predominantly Mormon community, and they all made their living doing that on the semis, hauling logs, hauling anything they could haul as far as the woods go, and taking it to the sawmill.
Oakwood.
And so that's pretty much what the town did, and they had their own thoughts about things. And
Do you think the town had a hard time accepting this notoriety?
I think some people in town had a hard time thinking that this is all real. And some of the kids went to school at Snowflake, including our daughter, where Travis went to school. He had quit school, I think, before my daughter had graduated. But everybody knew Travis. So different people had different opinions. But I didn't try to get involved with them.
Do you think Travis had this experience, or you may not want to share? I don't know.
Well, I'm a believer that there might be other people out there, because even the Bible says that there are other worlds that ye not know of. And who are we to say that something like that isn't out there? And the neighbors that we had there in Heber, their daughter-in-law's father worked for the Air Force on the Blue Book. So we learned a lot of things from that, but I'm not going to deny that there's nothing there. You kind of wonder sometimes about the circumstances, or if it's just a hoax or whatever.
Excuse me, I have a dry spot. I think that's all we have time for. I think I need to take you back because it's already 3:20, and if I don't get you back there by 3:30, Karen's going to be having a bird because she's got a lot of responsibility on her shoulders.
I saw one of those things one time.
Oh, I didn't get you on camera saying it.
Well, you didn't tell anybody except